He was a former member of the Russian successor agency to the Soviet KGB. In November 2000, he defected to Great Britain with his family, was granted asylum on humanitarian grounds, and eventually became a naturalized British citizen. I'm talking about Alexander Litvinenko, who became a writer and journalist in the United Kingdom. He was an outspoken critic of Russia's President Vladimir Putin, and many say he paid for this with his life. Hi, I'm Tamworth Grice. Welcome to my channel, the Tamworth Grice Files. Here you will find cases that are spooky, macabre, supernatural, and just plain weird. And in each instance, I have a personal connection to the story. So please stick around to the end to hear about that. Also, please subscribe because I really need subscribers. Litvinenko was born in Russia in 1962. After 1988, after military and government service, he was transferred to the KGB's military counterintelligence unit. Following extensive training, he became a KGB officer and served until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. In the replacement organization for the KGB, known as the FSB, Litvinenko was promoted and served in infiltrating organized crime. However, during his work in the FSB, he found that there were abundant connections between Russian law enforcement and the Russian mafia, and he found corruption. He reported the corruption, but became disenchanted when nothing was done. This was when he began pursuing the possibility of defecting. After a meeting with Putin, he held a press conference in 1998 and was dismissed from his position in the FSB because of that. This was when he began pursuing the possibility of defecting. Putin later admitted that he had personally ordered Litvinenko's dismissal from the FSB. After Litvinenko fled to London, he was convicted of corruption in Russia and given a 3.5-year jail sentence should he ever return. Living in London and becoming a writer and journalist, Litvinenko published numerous charges against Russia's government in general and Putin in particular. Some say that while in exile, he'd become Putin's most severe critic. Early in the day, on November 1st, 2006, he met with two former Russian agents, Dmitry Kovtun and Andrei Lugovoy, in the Millennium Hotel at the hotel's Pine Bar. He believed the two were there to collaborate with him and to discuss selling him information he could use in his writings and accusations. Litvinenko viewed the two men as valuable information sources about the Kremlin, Putin, and the FSB. In fact, they were Russian spies on a mission to kill him. Soon after the meeting, Litvinenko became suddenly and mysteriously sick. He began vomiting. 2 days later, as his condition grew worse, he was admitted to Barnet General Hospital in London. The staff was unable to determine what was wrong with him, so he was transferred for intensive care to University College Hospital. As the doctors struggled to determine the cause of his illness, Litvinenko himself eventually solved the crime and speculated that he'd been poisoned at the Pine Bar by Kovtun and Lugovoy, who had slipped something into his tea. He was right. The UK's Health Protection Agency found significant amounts of a rare, highly toxic radioactive element in his body. Meanwhile, Russian agents Lugovoy and Kovtun later confessed to a friend that they had in their possession, quote, a very expensive poison, unquote. but they knew next to nothing about it. They had no idea that they were even putting themselves in danger just by transporting it. The element was polonium-210, a rare radioactive substance that was fatal when ingested. Litvinenko died at age 44 on November 23, 2006. Later, under questioning, Kovtun and Lugovoy denied any wrongdoing, but on his deathbed, Litvinenko claimed Putin and or his henchmen were behind his assassination and had sent the two agents to kill him. Later, his widow Marina would accuse Moscow of arranging the poisoning, although she acknowledged that the order probably did not come from Putin personally. In 2015, in a London court hearing, a representative of Scotland Yard said, quote, "The only credible explanation is that the Russian state is involved in Litvinenko's murder," unquote. Dmitry Kovtun and Andrei Lugovoy were formally charged with the murder of Alexander Litvinenko by British authorities. However, they were never prosecuted or tried in a court of law because by that time they were back in Russia and their home country refused to extradite them. Now here's my part in the story. Prior to COVID, I used to spend summers in the UK, primarily in London. On a trip in 2016, I visited Highgate Cemetery, the enormous and beautiful Victorian burial ground of numerous luminaries, including the parents and sister of Charles Dickens, chemist and physicist Michael Faraday, the grandson of Sigmund Freud, Karl Marx, poet Christina Rossetti, and so on. I took a tour with a guide who pointed out many of the famous graves and told stories about the deceased. One of these was Litvinenko. She explained that because of the radioactive nature of the poison, he was buried in a grave lined with 6 feet of lead. Very sadly, I noticed fresh flowers on his grave, no doubt put there by his wife Marina, who was still grieving after a decade. So, what do you think? Do you believe Putin himself was behind the poisoning? Do you think Litvinenko was rash in criticizing Putin so harshly, even from the distance of the United Kingdom? Or do you admire his courage and his quest for justice? Do you think Litvinenko was unwise for meeting with 2 Russian operatives, even though they posed as sources? Do you admire Litvinenko for solving his own murder, even though he died soon thereafter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video compelling, please subscribe because, as previously mentioned, I really need subscribers. This is Tamworth Grice signing off. Until next time, as always, stay wonderful, stay weird, and have beautiful dreams.